Hey everybody, welcome back to another video on the 5-cylinder turbo project. We've got updates for you on everything that's been going on behind the scenes, plus some on-camera work stuff that's going on, because if you watched the last video, we got to do that oil drain, and yeah, that's probably the most nerve-wracking part about this build, because if you screw that up, you are drilling right into your upper oil pan, and that's a big problem if you screw it up. I think we're going to try to tackle that today and get it done, so buckle up, it's going to be a wild ride. Let's get after it. So I don't know how much different this is actually going to look for you guys in the engine bay, but a lot of stuff's been happening. I'm also waiting on some parts to come in because we had to order some more parts once I figured out some nuances of what's going on and how stuff's going to be routed. But check this out. That Arashi GTX 3071R is in its home on a fully torqued down SPA exhaust manifold with the Mark IV riser pipe. I won't go into too much detail on that riser pipe because we did talk about it. This is a Mark V. That's the Mark IV riser pipe. I'm running it because I wanted the turbo up a little higher and I wanted the turbo flip, so the exhaust's on the passenger side and the intake's on the driver's side. Basically the gist of it. But the turbo is in place on a torque down manifold with that riser pipe torqued down. So the manifold and the riser pipe aren't going anywhere. I can still take the turbo in and out to get it clocked exactly how I want it, because the compressor side here, the cold side, I still have to tweak a little bit when I start running the intercooler piping. And if you notice the firewall right here, I did open up this big section right here on the hot side, because the hot side fit and everything was fine, but I did test fit the blanket on here and the blanket was rubbing against the firewall. So I opened that up to give us plenty of clearance with the blanket and everything on. That way, when we got this all said and done, we'll have plenty of clearance. We won't have to worry about it rubbing and wearing through the blanket or causing any issues. I did also take the time to make up the oil feed line, which just runs right off of the side of the head there. There is that little banjo bolt running to a dash 4 fitting. So this is PTFE line. I've got it wrapped in this little heat resistant shielding, but that's just going to run behind the turbo there, sit right on top there, and feed the turbo with oil. So that's a super easy part. Nice oil feed makes it super easy because you can just run it right off the side of the head here. If your port was still plugged, just pull that out, run that adapter in there. I was running my oil pressure for my aftermarket oil pressure gauge off of that, so that is going to have to get relocated. Oil feed line is done. We got to work on the oil drain line. So I already started the oil drain line. As you can see, it's just hanging off. I've got a straight AN10 coming off of the adapter on the turbo, and it is just being routed down. It's going to go to the side of the wastegate. This is just where it's kind of sitting, but I got my length. I can go either side of it. Wastegate exhaust is going to be on this side because that's going to line it up best to just do a dump tube right under the tunnel here. And we will also be at a good angle to get that mostly straight but just kind of bent in. I am going to order a 45-degree fitting. I didn't have a 45-degree -10 fitting. I don't know why I didn't order one of those, but we got to go into the upper oil pan over here, drill in for the bulkhead fitting so that we can mount that 45 and get this all attached and set in place. And I think the way I have that routed coming off the turbo and just kind of going down by the firewall and making its way back around, it should clear the axles and everything no problem, so we shouldn't run into issues with rubbing and all that kind of stuff. Shouldn't even really have to tie the line out of the way. As long as I get the proper length, it's going to kind of keep it pushed and arc in the way that it should be. So the drain should be pretty good. Gravity should have no problem doing its thing and getting it down into the oil pan. 45 degree coming off of that, and then it's coming straight out of the turbo, so gravity should do its thing and it should work no problem, and it shouldn't back up all the way back up into the turbo and have smoke issues, because nobody wants that. And I did order a 45/64 size drill bit, so that should be a proper size drill bit to get that bulkhead fitting nice and snug into the upper oil pan and not be all super wobbly and loose. I think from my measurements that 45/64, and it looks right when you hold it up to the bulkhead, should be the right size. All right, before we get to drilling and marking and making a mess on that upper oil pan, I do have to drop, obviously, the oil pan itself, the lower oil pan, the main oil pan. There are some updates that I wanted to go over that have been happening behind the scenes that, yeah, just want to give you an update on. And that first thing we got to talk about is cooling. We are talking about the radiator again. Don't worry, I promise it'll be quick. Anyone that's run this Mishimoto radiator for the R32 knows that these water necks just don't seal properly with the factory seals that they come with, because the sizing is just a little off. I don't know what it is with the aluminum ones that they welded on at Mishimoto. They're just ever so slightly too small. Now, I did talk about this a little bit in the last video, and I don't want to beat a dead horse to death. The link that I left down in the description for those bigger seals, which is the solution for this, because you got to go to a little bigger seal to take up that gap and get these things to seal up properly, should work. I got those seals in. I do have the outlets on. So the water necks are installed. The top one here is super tight. Obviously you are running a bigger seal. This one doesn't have any play whatsoever in it. The snap ring is in place in the groove, so this thing is not going to pop off. The bottom one here, which even on the factory seal was really wobbly, like you could really just super wobble. This one's got a little tiny bit of play in it, but it is locked into place. You can still kind of rotate it, but you can feel the seal grabbing, so it should be good. I don't think I need to go to a bigger seal on the bottom. I think everything's going to be good. Obviously we won't know how this works until it is installed in the system and we're running coolant through it. We get it up to operating temperature and we just see that it works. However, I am very confident that this is going to work. So we've kind of got the core support here with the condenser, the radiator, everything kind of just ready to bolt back in when we get to that point on this project and we're ready to bolt it onto the front of the car. That's kind of it for the major stuff that's been happening behind the scenes. A lot of the other stuff has just been tidying up stuff and doing a lot of little jobs, clean things up. I did start working on rewrapping those gauge wires that I had run through the firewall. I'm still kind of in the process of working on that. I do have the solution coming for my oil pressure gauge, which we will talk about in just a sec. But the other thing I did do was get the coolant bottle connected to the thermostat housing. So we've got our 90 coming off here, should give us plenty of clearance for the intake manifold when we bolt that on. Just kind of running through here. Did put a little bit of heat shrink on it to try to get this bend, because this tubing doesn't really want to bend that great and you're smacking it right into the head there. Kind of pre-bent it, heated it up, put some heat shrink on there to kind of hold it. It's not collapsed or anything on itself, so it should be totally fine, and run the volume that we need down to the billet thermostat housing here. All right, so on this billet oil filter housing, you can see that there's just not a whole lot of room to work with when it comes to adding your aftermarket sensor probes. It's very nice that it is obviously machined to add all this other stuff. This port here is going to be blocked because I am running the coolant feed to the turbo off of this, so that's what this 60-degree AN is. Then that blocks that one off. This is the factory oil pressure sensor, so this is what goes to the ECU, lets it know that there's oil pressure so everything works properly. This 8th MPT here is close enough to this that big old bulky sending unit that I had on my Pro Sport gauges for oil pressure will not fit without running an extension or an adapter or something like that. I do have the temperature probe in this adapter here on the end, so that probe's just going straight in here. But my solution for this is to just get a new gauge from AEM, because they use a smaller sending unit that'll fit right in that spot without using any adapters or anything. And I know what you're saying, well, why are you just spending all this money to fix one little thing like that when you could just get an adapter? I've been wanting AEM gauges for a while now. I wanted to update all the Pro Sports. Eventually I want to get rid of all of those and go AEM on the whole thing. So my excuse for this was, while I'm in there, I got the core support off, everything's accessible, super easy. I picked up an oil pressure gauge and a boost gauge because I have the intake manifold off. So I think on the bottom side of that IE intake manifold, I can just thread the pressure sending unit right into the manifold and make things nice and easy. So it's kind of a while I'm in there type of deal, but I did pick up 2 new AEM gauges that we're gonna get wired in. That was my not so simple solution to getting oil pressure on my aftermarket gauge hooked back up. I also cut the barb down on this fitting here for the breather filter on the catch can setup. It just looks better. It's a little lower. It sits nice and flush with this. Gives us more hood clearance, all that stuff, but it's just looks better. Just cut it down so it sits shorter. Anyways, now that all the updates are out of the way, I think we need to tackle that drain line for the turbo oil. We're gonna have to drill into the upper oil pan. A little nervous about it, but I think it'll be fine. Everybody does it when you go turbo like this anyways. It's just one of those things where if you screw it up, you screw it up in a big way, because now there's a giant hole in your block. I've already drained the oil, so I think we just need to get under the car, start working on it, and get that lower pan off so we can line everything up, make our mark, and start drilling. All right, boys and girls, she is in there. Kind of a pain, just because there's literally no gap between the subframe and the block and all that to get a drill in there with a drill bit. Now, I did run into that issue where I couldn't get the drill in there and get straight on. It would have been a really bad angle. So I kind of forgot to turn the camera back on and film the process. What I did was I removed the lower dog bone mount that allows the engine and transmission to rock. I reversed my vice clamps and used it as a spreader between the subframe and the upper oil pan, and just rocked it forward as far as I could so I could get a correct angle on the drill and drill that hole, not oversize it or anything. That way it's still gonna seal and be good. We got it drilled, we got it in. I just forgot to film the whole process. Now we gotta clean up the oil pan, clean up the upper oil pan mating surface, regasket it, screw it back on, put the dog bone mount in, do a bunch of other stuff. But the bung for the drain is in, so that's good. And when I say vice clamps, this is what I'm talking about. I use these. The end here that doesn't have the clampy handle on it, you can reverse that, put it on the other side, and then it just becomes a spreader instead of a clamp. So yeah, I just used it to push everything forward. When I put that bung into, I also put a little bit of red Loctite on it, because I don't ever want to drop that oil pan because that thing came loose. So I just don't want to have to drain the oil and drop the pan and redeal all that just to tighten it up. Argue with me all you want. I put a dot of red Loctite on there. Some of you are going to say that's the wrong thing to do. Some of you are going to be like, it's all right. I don't ever plan on taking it off because then I would just have a big hole. So yeah, red Loctite made sense to me. It was just like one drop. It wasn't that much. right, we did it. The oil pan is back on. We've got the oil bung drilled and mounted and everything ready. So when I get that 45-degree AN line fitting, I can just attach it to the hose and get that thing all plumbed in for the oil drain on the turbo. I had a 60-degree one, but it was curved up too much and it was gonna put it right into the axle. So I think a 45 is gonna be about perfect to just go around that axle, not have any issues. It has been a long day for me. My work light died. I'm exhausted. That's what we're calling it for this video. I still gotta put the dog bone mount back in and kind of wrap up some things that we had to do to get that oil drain line in, but that was a big hurdle that we passed. Next up, we really kind of got to start getting things plumbed in. I think I'm going to put the intake manifold back on soon. That way we can start routing intercooler piping and all that. It's going to be a little tricky going down since I have this on the driver's side and we're going down, so I've got to figure out where to run that through. It's really tight space to run the intercooler piping through because I run the street shield from ECS, so that drain pan sucks it right up again, or not the drain pan, the skid plate sucks it right up. Like I said, it's been a long day. It's really close to the engine, so there's not really room to just shove a pipe down there. So we got to figure out routing and doing all that. We're on the latter end of things, I think. So we still got a lot to do, but that was a big hurdle getting that drain line in for the turbo. We're making progress. I'm just rambling on because I'm tired and exhausted. Have a wonderful day. Pet a dog. Do a good deed for someone. Live your life to the fullest. Turbo your 5-cylinder. It's a lot of work. It's totally going to be worth it in the end. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.